So I have my code on the right here, and the page it generates on the left. As you can see, I have the HTML tag at the beginning, the root element of all HTML, and then two child elements, head and body. In the head is meta information, information about the page, and then the title of the document, the script, brings in JavaScript and the style sheet here. Style sheet is very simple. It just sets sans serif fonts. Then the body itself, we have H2, my page, the header, and then a paragraph, ordered list, followed by four elements of the order, four children of the order list, coffee, tea, milk, and then a list item containing a link, and then an input checkbox button here. So I have a plugin for the browser, and it's called HTML tree generator, and this will show us essentially the view of the DOM from a tree perspective. So inverted tree, like many data structures in computer programming, inverted tree, HTML is the root of the page, and then two child elements directly underneath that, head and body. And then you can see the two meta tags that were reviewed in the HTML, the title, the script, and the link. Then the body has those two script tags, which I kind of puzzled about, but I realized that it was a style that or scripts that Live Server inserts into our HTML page for that live update feature that it has. So it's inserted a little bit of JavaScript in there. Then we have the elements that came directly from the HTML, the header, the paragraph, the ordered list, the four children of the ordered list, the input and the label for the input, and then finally the break. So as we discussed, JavaScript's job is to traverse this tree and to manipulate it as the user interacts with it. So what can JavaScript do? It can do virtually anything it needs to do, or all things it needs to do with this tree. It can take nodes out, it can put nodes in, it can edit existing nodes, in all aspects of it too. It can change the HTML, change the style, call methods, as we'll see. So methods and properties, we should address that. As these HTML elements get loaded into the browser, they become objects in the browser. So they have object notation, methods and property that we'll get to with the dot notation. So I brought up my dev tools, and I'll dock it on the side here. And I'll type in, here I am in the console window, I'll type in document. And that's how we can get access to our document object model. There it is. So first thing we'll do, document, dot, notice the familiar dot, first element child, right. So first element child of the document is the HTML tag, and you can see there it is. It has the head and the body of it. So let's do that again. So the first element child of the first element, the head material. By the way, let's do this too. Last element child. So at the root, since there's only one element at the root, the first element child is HTML, and the last element child is HTML. So let's get back up to this again. The first element is head. Now we'll do all right. Now we're at the body. So the document, first element child, that's the HTML, and then the last element child within it, since it has two, is the body, and now we're at the body. So you can see we have this inverted tree, and we're starting to traverse this tree, and that's what you'll have to do. And what I'm typing in the console, by the way, is, as we've seen, they're JavaScript snippets. So this is the same way you'd start to manipulate this tree in JavaScript. So I've cleared my console for the next step. I'll type in document here. Document. First element child. The HTML piece. Do up arrow. Do last element child. Hit the tab. Hit the enter. We've seen this, and then I'll do dot children. The children of the last element child. So from the document, the root, first element child. HTML, the last child of the HTML element, body, and then the children, all of the direct children in the tree here. And you can see there are two scripts that Light Server inserted, and then our H2 and paragraph. So script, This is 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll see how we can traverse this. So that's an array. So if I do this, I get to the ordered list. That's the fourth element in that array. And then here I am with the third element in the array. Now let's actually update that. First element in the array, we can see that it's text is equal to, let's actually enter in text, inner text. So that's just the text. There's also inner HTML. So I'm going to modify the inner text so we can look at the property by bringing it up. This is a property. Remember, these are objects. Hello. And then we can manipulate that text. So we saw how we can manipulate the text, and again, if I did inner HTML, then I could put in HTML tags. And realize if I can put HTML tags into that element, how big of a thing I can push into this thing. Right here, I just modified the text, as we can see. So let's look at another property attribute of that child, style. So here we see the CSS, essentially the CSS styles here. Notice that they're written like properties, like you do in Java, rather than CSS properties when you address them from CSS, but the names are the same. So think about all the stuff you learned with CSS. Now you're able to manipulate the CSS on the fly as the user interacts with the page. So very, very quickly, we've seen how to manipulate content and manipulate style. And all of your study from CSS should come into play here. So color, so I've set the style color equal to red. So all the CSS properties that you've learned, you can get to when you traverse to the element and you call out the style and the color, or any other CSS property. I'm going to close the dev, at least minimize the dev tools for a moment. We'll take another look at the HTML. I've put in a couple of IDs here. So the link has an ID and link, and this vehicle, I have a bike, also has an ID. And now we'll see how to manipulate this through IDs. So this, by the way, what I'm going to show you next is the typical way you do this from JavaScript. So document.get element by ID. This is called a CSS selector. So there's get elements by class. Think of the nature. So more than one element can share classes, right? The overall appearance of the thing. It's a group of things that you address through CSS, through CSS class selector. You can also do, as we've seen, select CSS via an ID. And an ID is a unique element on the page. So that's why it's get element by ID versus get elements by class. So get elements by ID, remember we had, actually I'm going to have to look back here at the HTML. We have the vehicle 1, and that's our ID. So we'll see what happens when we put in vehicle 1. So in CSS, we'd have to put a hash in front of it, but it already knows we're picking out an ID here, so we don't need to pick out that tag. So, and there is our checkbox. Okay. So before we saw how you can manipulate text and HTML with an element, and also the style. Here, get element by ID, and then I'm going to actually invoke the click method, manually clicking the method. Look, clear over here, it checked the checkbox. So anything you can do to manipulate the page, you can do via the DOM manipulation and HTML. Okay, so the next thing I want to manipulate is this link, anchor tag that's inside the list item. It says Google right now. So let's see how we can do that. So I do document, get element by ID, and I have link here, right? And I'll just do the click here, right? So when the link is clicked, it goes to its reference. So just like we clicked this button here, we can click the link here, and that's how we do it. Get element by ID, and again, setting up your HTML with appropriate IDs and the elements make it easy to work with it in JavaScript. They're essentially a hook for the JavaScript and other things. Let's see if we can manipulate this. Of course, we can set the text. Let's do something else here. I'm going to do get attribute. And since there can be more than one attribute, we need to name the attribute. And there we have it. No, something's wrong. One moment. I have mismatched quotes here for my JavaScript here. Do up arrow. There we go. So that's our href. Now let's see if we can manipulate that. So there's a method called setAttribute. I think I'll actually take this text here. Set the attribute href to HTTP. Remember the protocol, and then we have here. All right, so now we'll try. Did the same mistake. One moment. I'm trying to click method on the attribute. Of course, that doesn't exist on the attribute. It exists on the element. There we go. All right. So we've seen that through JavaScript, we've manipulated, we've traversed the DOM. We've picked out elements of the DOM by ID. We've manipulated the text content. You can also manipulate the HTML content. We've manipulated the CSS styles, and we've actually invoked functions, and we've changed attributes. So think about all the things that you've learned in HTML in terms of page layout, all the things that you've learned with CSS. All of those are addressable in the DOM tree via JavaScript, making JavaScript indeed very powerful in terms of web pages. It's its purpose. It's a DOM manipulation language. That was its first purpose. It's being grown into a general purpose language, but its main thing is to manipulate the browser DOM. Opens up a whole new world for you. Thank you.